All right, so there's a new global arms race happening right now. But this isn't your grandfather's arms race. We're not talking about nuclear warheads or stealth bombers. No, this one's being fought with lines of code, with algorithms, with artificial intelligence. We are stepping into a brand new era of warfare, and honestly, the consequences could completely reshape the world as we know it.
You know, when Vladimir Putin said this back in 2017, it wasn't just some throwaway comment. It was like the starting pistol for this new global competition. It made it crystal clear just how high the geopolitical stakes are. This is so much bigger than just faster computers or smarter phones. We're talking about a fundamental seismic shift in military power.
Okay, so here's how we're going to break this whole thing down. We'll kick things off with the big picture, this global contest for AI supremacy. Then we're going to zoom right in on how this tech is already being used on the battlefield today, from AI-powered targeting to these incredible intelligent drone swarms. After that, we'll pull back out to tackle the huge ethical questions this all raises. And finally, we'll look at the frantic race to regulate it all, hopefully before it's too late.
So let's get into it. Right now, the major world powers are pouring billions of dollars into military AI. And we're not talking about just tinkering around in a lab. Oh no. They are actively developing and deploying these technologies to get a real decisive edge over their rivals.
Okay, so the term you're going to hear a lot is LAWS, which stands for Lethal Autonomous Weapon Systems. And the phrase that really matters here, the part that should give you pause, is without further human intervention. Think about that. We're talking about systems designed to make that final life-or-death decision completely on their own.
What's really interesting is that everyone's got a different reason for being in this race. For the US, it's all about using its tech lead to stay on top. For China, AI is basically its ticket to building a world-class military, putting it on par with other major powers. And Russia? Well, they're playing a slightly different game, using automation as a clever way to close the gap with its rivals.
Okay, so this isn't some far-off sci-fi future. This stuff is happening right now. Let's zoom in from the big picture strategy to a very real application. AI-assisted targeting. This is where this whole abstract arms race gets very, very real. 100. Get this. That's how many potential bombing targets an AI system, nicknamed the Gospel, can cook up in a single day. To give you an idea of how insane that is, human analysts used to generate about 50 targets in an entire year. The jump in speed and scale is it's mind-boggling. And if you thought 100 was a lot, check this out. 37,000. That's how many potential targets a different AI system, called Lavender, reportedly identified. And we're not talking about buildings or bridges here. We're talking about individuals, people, flagged by an algorithm for a potential strike. So what happens when you have these AI systems spitting out targets at this incredible rate? Well, you get this. Over 22,000. That's how many targets have been struck in Gaza since October 7th, 2023, according to Israeli forces. A pace like that, it just wouldn't be humanly possible without AI in the loop, making recommendations.
The machine did it coldly. Wow. That headline it says it all, doesn't it? It gets right to the core of this deeply uncomfortable new reality and forces us to ask, what happens to war, to humanity, when we hand over the job of finding a target to an algorithm?
But AI isn't just pointing at targets. Oh no. It's also completely revolutionizing how you go after them. And that brings us to the rise of intelligent drone swarms. This is a total game changer because it's not just about using more drones, it's about using them in a fundamentally new way. Get this, over 200. China has already tested tech that lets a single soldier control a swarm of more than 200 drones at once. Just try to picture that for a second. How do you even begin to defend against something like that? So what makes a swarm so powerful? Well, it kind of boils down to three key things. First, just the sheer numbers. You can overwhelm pretty much any defense. Second, they're not all the same. You can have some doing recon, others jamming signals, and others ready to attack. But it's this third piece, algorithmization, that's the real secret sauce. It's basically AI giving the whole swarm a collective brain, a hive mind. And this chart really shows you the difference, right? Your standard drone is kind of dumb. It just follows a preset plan. But a swarm? They talk to each other. They negotiate. They collaborate to get the job done. And here's the really wild part. If you cut off contact with the human operator, they can just keep going on their own. That's a whole other level of autonomous. Okay, so we've seen all this incredible and frankly kind of terrifying new tech. But what it does is bring us right back to some really old, really human problems. Things like bias and, who's to blame when things go wrong. AI doesn't solve these issues, it just puts them on steroids, amplifying them to a scale we've never seen before.
Look, human bias has always been a factor in war, but an AI is like a bias amplifier. It takes all the hidden prejudices of its programmers and all the skewed data it was trained on, and then it scales them up at machine speed. And it all happens so fast that there's basically no time for a person to jump in and say, whoa, wait a minute, that's not right, before it's too late.
And this leads us to the million-dollar question, doesn't it? If an autonomous weapon messes up, if it causes unintended harm, who's responsible? The person who wrote the code? The commander who gave the order to use it? The company that built it? Or do we blame the machine itself? In this new world, there are no easy answers.
So, faced with all these massive, thorny challenges, the international community is trying to set some ground rules. But this has kicked off a totally different kind of competition, the race to regulate. The problem is, it's not going so well. Just look at this timeline. It shows a huge disconnect. The first talks at the UN started way back in 2014. Now, a decade later, progress is still being described as sluggish, mostly because of political squabbling. So while the technology is advancing at lightning speed, diplomacy is just crawling along. And that gap between the two, that's where things get really, really dangerous.
And that leaves us with this one final critical question. This technology isn't waiting around for us to get our act together. It's here. So the choice we face is pretty stark. Are we going to define the limits of AI in war, or are we going to let the cold logic of the algorithm define ours?